Hi, I'm Jennifer Fairbanks, and I'm the designer of Porcelynne, and this is my daughter Emily. Today I'm actually excited to share that I am re-releasing the Emma Tank add-on. So this actually originally was the Tankini, and this has been renamed because all my other patterns have names, so I decided to give it the name of Emma. And Emma is the name of one of our testers, so I'm really thankful for her help testing. But this is now the Emma, and so the Emma is the tank part on the bottom. So I've just made a couple revisions to the original pattern, and then I actually added an additional back. Now there'll be another video showing how to actually sew the other one with the other back. So with what I did with this Emma, this is actually the Christina top, and what I did was I added some black satin edge piping along the princess seam here, and I have a gray and then the yellow. And I think it's a really nice little contrast. And I have a handful of kits that I put together with this. I did do all the kits with the power net as instead of the wicking fabric, because this gray fabric is actually pretty thin, and so it definitely needs more support than just the wicking fabric. Yes, Emily?
That's almost like a bumblebee pattern.
Yeah, it is kind of like a bumblebee. The bumblebee was gray. And the cool thing, if you remember, this has a secret pocket. And you'll notice that I was a little bit lazy when I did the sewing video, so I didn't quite do the pocket absolutely correctly with how I do it in the instructions. But in the next video that you'll be watching after this one, I did the pockets correctly. So this one has the secret pocket, and this just has the full sports bra on the top that is just added to the full on the bottom. So this is really just the same as kind of the Tankini that I did. If you have already purchased the Tankini, the great thing is that you can log into your account and then just re-download, and you'll have all of the new patterns with it. If for some reason you have already used all of the downloads, just send me a quick email and I'll reactivate it so you can download the new files. Is that it, Emily? Yeah? And I did my straps backwards, so they're actually a little bit more detailed on the outside. So it's it's kind of hard to tell. Got the black strap here, and then the other fabric is wrapped around it. So, okay. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to work on assembling the top portion of the sports bra. So I'm using power net. It's my power net that's in here, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm using kind of a thinner fabric. That's probably a little bit too thin for a sports bra, but the power net should really help with that support. Also, the color on this is a little off. This looks green. This is actually a gray, but I think the balance between the yellow of the table and the yellow of this makes it a little bit more difficult. You'll probably, in the intro video, you've seen that it actually looks a lot more gray than this does right now. We're also going to add some black piping along this seam. So just piping edge elastic, so it kind of keeps its shape and it's nice, and it adds a nice little contrast. I'll probably also use this on the bottom. So the first thing I want to do is, well, we can set the back to the side, is I actually want to prep this elastic. And so this is just an extra step that we're going to have to do. If you're using a piping elastic, you can certainly sew everything all in one step, but what I think is a better idea is to go in and kind of base this in. So I am going to be sewing it right to the edge, so then we can kind of turn it over and have that little edge. So this elastic, the whole elastic is 3/8 of an inch, and this is 1/4 right here. So what we want to do is, because this seam allowance is actually 3/8 of an inch, I'm just going to pin it and set it here about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And then what I can do is I'm just going to do kind of a quick basting stitch with my straight stitch, so that way it stays in place as I'm sewing it, and we can eventually, I'll try and sew it far enough to the outside so we can pop that thread when we're done. And so I don't really want to take and make this any tighter. I don't want to pull the elastic. I really just want this to be kind of just straight without any pulling, because we don't want to pull that seam anymore. But this will also help keep this fabric from stretching out, since this is a little bit more lighter weight. And I do have a kit for this one. I only had about, I think, 5 yards of this fabric. So this is a little bit more exclusive of a kit, and you're also going to get the piping edge elastic as well, enough to do the seams I'm doing on this tankini. Okay. I'm going to go do a quick basting stitch to get this in so then I can start assembling the sides. Okay, so now with this attached, I can then work on pinning. So as you can see, I actually have an asymmetrical one, so you need to make sure that you're doing this correctly. So I'm keeping all my pattern pieces lined up the same way. So here I'm going to take and I'm going to line up my princess seam and work on pinning this together. Now normally when I'm kind of doing this on my own, I don't even really pin it. I really just kind of go to the machine and sew it. But because we have this piping on here, I want to make sure that, you know, it stays in good order. It doesn't get stretched out of shape. Now I'm actually going to go down to the bottom, and so I kind of pinned halfway on the top bit. So you can see I might need to ease in this area around the bust a little bit. So I'm going to take, and that's just because we have the concave and the convex shape going together. So it'll just make it a little helpful, and I'm just going to distribute that between those. I'm going to keep the top 2 pins. Okay. So I've got that side pinned together. Now I'm going to work on this side. Okay, so we have this piece all prepped. I'm going to go ahead and sew this one, but I'm also going to go ahead and do this. So how we've done here, since I've got it all the same side, we don't want to do it this way because then we'll end up with, it'll be wrong side since mine's asymmetrical. So I actually need to come in and pin from underneath here. So now that the princess seams are all pinned together, I can go ahead and sew this. I can also go ahead and, so I can get the whole top done at once, pin my side seams together. So we really just do the whole top, and then we assemble the whole bottom. Okay, I'm going to sew this and I'll be back. So here is, so what it'll be, so the shiny side is on this side. So what I should probably do is go in and do a top stitch on the gray side. And that way I make sure that I see the shiny side on the yellow. Other than that, I think that looks pretty good. On this side, I got a little bit close over here, so this side is not as perfect, but everything else looks pretty good. So I'm going to go and I'm going to do this off camera and at another point before we come back to attach this to the bottom. So both of these are done. So I can go ahead and set these to the side. And now we can work on laying out the bottom. Okay, so this is the back. And this is the center front. And we have the pocket. So let's work on this pocket first. So we have the top piece, and then we have the little secret pocket that's at the bottom. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to take, let's flip it so the right side's up. Wrong sides are facing up. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to take and overlock the edge and then pin it up like this. So you can take and you can fold this if you want, but I just want to have a clean finish. So I'm going to overlock the bottom of this, fold them up, and then I'm going to do the same thing over here. So overlock the side of this on the wrong side, and then we're going to roll this up as well. So I'm going to go ahead and overlock that, and then I'll pin it, and I'll show you how we're going to baste it all together. Okay. I like to make it easy, so I usually overlock everything, kind of connecting it. Okay. Okay, with the wrong side facing up, I'm going to take and I'm going to fold this on my notch. And I'm just going to pin the sides. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to baste these edges all down on all four of them, just baste them all separately, and then we're going to work on working on assembling the rest of the pocket. Okay. Okay, so let's set the yellow side up. So the seams are facing up, and then we're going to do the gray sides so the seams are facing down. Oh, did I do that one wrong? Oh, I did. Okay, so I could have sworn I did that one right. Oh well. Thing it's basting. Okay. So this is supposed to be folded this direction. So I'm going to line this up. And the next step is actually to baste the whole sides together. So I'm actually just going to kind of skip rebasting that piece down. So I'll put that in carefully, lining up all my edges. And so this little secret pocket I kind of created because we were going to the water parks a lot, and I wanted to have a way that I could keep stuff with me without losing it. Of course, The original one I made, I didn't make the pocket deep enough, and I ended up losing my driver's license at the water park. We did find it. They found it before we left, so not all was lost. So what we can do is we can then go and baste these edges. If you are really good with pinning, if you're really good with pinning, then you can actually go ahead and we can attach the centerpiece in here. So it's not a lot of complicated shape in here. Let's see which is the right side. That's the right side up. So if you want to skip the basting, as long as you are experienced enough in this, then we can go ahead and then pin this over here. But without the basting, you have to be very careful because you now have 3 layers that you're going through. And if the two of the pocket layer get separated or get moved, it can make it so it's not really doesn't look that good anymore. So I'm taking a risk here. In the instructions, I do have that you should be basting these together first and then doing what I'm doing. But I'm putting extra pins in, just kind of make sure everything goes together. Okay, so we have those. And if we want to make it so it's nice and easy, we just do one more time at the sewing machine on my right side facing here. And then we start pinning from the top and go down. So now I've got the sides and all of these panels pinned. So I'm going to go ahead and sew all of these, and then we can come back and work on assembling the top to the bottom. Okay, so now for the bottom, all we really need to do is we need to finish up and hem the bottom of this. So what I'm going to do is on this front piece, I'm going to overlock the bottom on the front and overlock the bottom on the back. And then once I do that, I'm going to fold it under by the amount that this is. So it looks like this is supposed to be about 3/4 of an inch. It may have stretched, but then what I'm going to do is I'm going to then zigzag it down. So I'm going to do that in one step. So I'm going to overlock the bottom and then zigzag it up as a hem. Okay, so taking a look at our hem, I hem that front part so it zigzags from here to there, and then I hem the back part with a zigzag. So the bottom part is done. Now off the video, because I didn't really need to show you the full construction of the top, so I went ahead and I finished the neckline and added my straps. So I'm doing black straps. I actually flipped them reverse. So there's the elastic and then the black binding. You probably can't see it because it's just black on black. But now what we're going to do is we want to now attach this to here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and kind of line up the sides. Now I did an understitch on here, so it's going to help it roll. So you'll notice when I get to the hem, you'll see that the lining of the hem is going to be just a little bit longer. And that's fine, we can trim that off. So just kind of taking this around, just kind of taking evenly kind of, just make it look nice as you're coming from the neckline. So you can see it's about 1/4 of an inch that it's longer on the inside, and that's because of the understitch. And my understitch is actually a zigzag, so if you're wondering. Okay, I can pull this down. So hopefully my seam doesn't stretch too much. It'll probably be fine once it's worn, because that gray fabric is pretty darn stretchy. Okay, center front of the bodice. Now I managed to get oil on this from my sewing machine, so I'll have to try and get that out. Yeah, it looks like I completely cut the gray upside down. So it's inside out. That's fine. Only I will notice, or anyone who's looking closely. Okay, so we've got our waistline pinned together. Now, what I would recommend is actually going around and I would actually overlock these together first. So that way nothing moves, and that way you can trim off the part the extra that doesn't belong there. And then when we attach it to the top, that's one less chance of it getting messed up. So I'm going to go and I'm going to overlock the hem of this so all these pieces are together, so I can come back and then we can work on trying to attach the two together. Okay, so the top is now kind of all put together. So the edges won't turn, my neckline's finished. And now what we want to do, let's move this off, is we want to try and line up our seams. So you see what I did? I kind of mix matched it, and I thought this would be this would be fun. Okay, so if we kind of take the center, actually let's work on our seams. So now here we have, I did the piping, so we actually have a little bit of play. So what I try and do is line that seam up right with the seam right before the black. So on the gray, so what I want to do is I want to make sure that where I'm going to be sewing it, which is at 3/8 of an inch, those seams line up perfectly. So putting a pin right there, making that stay. I'm going to put actually a pin in the other direction too, to kind of keep that nice and solid. And then I'm going to do that on this side. So really just trying to reinforce and make sure that that spot is not going to move. Okay, so I'm also going to do that at the side seam because I want those seams to line up. So here you can see I'm lining them up, and right at that 3/8, put my pin across this way. And so I'm not lining up based on the lining of the top. Okay, so then the last one is over here. And it's always nice when our seams line up, which is why I take this little extra attention to get these together. Okay, before I were to sew all these two pieces together to finish this up, I'm going to go and I'm going to tack this down at my 3/8 of an inch seam allowance with my straight stitch. Now you can do this with your basting, that way in case you don't do it right, it's easy to rip it out. So I'm going to do that and we can check to see where we're at. Okay, the moment of truth. Did I tack them down so they're right on lining up? Perfect. That one lines up perfectly. That one lines up perfectly. This one does not line up perfectly. So this one is off by like 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to change this one because this is going to be right in the front. And this one is, I think that one's close enough. So I'm going to redo this one. And this is why we wanted to do this before we go and attach the tops to the bottom. Okay, so let's try that again. So it's possible it just stretched where it, okay. Okay, I will re-tack this down. Okay. Okay, that looks much better. So obviously this is not finished because it's not fully attached. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and pin the rest of the waistline, and then so I can go and overlock it. Now, if you're going to add elastic to the band, and you certainly can, especially if you're using this particular kit, the gray fabric is not as firm, but the power net is. So the power net should kind of help keep it all up. But to put the elastic is optional. I find that on some of the ones I've used, I really didn't need it. So it's, I'd say try it with one or try it without one. You can always go back and add it afterwards because it's something we do after you do this part anyways. Okay, so I get the side over here. Okay, and now we just have this convex concave. So it's just a little bit tricky to get it in here. But once you get that center bit, the other pieces, they line up just fine. Okay, so now the whole waistline is pinned. I'm going to go ahead and overlock this and show you kind of it finished before I add elastic to it. Okay, look at the outside. This pretty much looks done. Looks like I got a little pleat in there. Oh, sometimes that happens. Let's see if I can pick out a single stitch and fix it. Yep. Single stitch did it. I might want to go back and just reinforce that since I did rip out one of the threads for the overlock. Yep. But I can go in and tack that with a straight stitch. So that's looking good. The back looks good too. Okay, now what we can do on the inside, so I like to grab a piece of band elastic. Now this is just one I have in my own stash. This one is just a white one. This isn't one actually I would probably end up using, but I'm doing it for this video so you can actually see kind of what I'm doing. What I want to say that you're going to do is we want it so the plush side is going to be against the skin. So we can do it so we can sew the picot edge up to the top. It doesn't really matter at this point. We can do it so it's like this, so as long as the brush side is against the skin. So I'm going to start just kind of taking my, so I'm going to do it with the kind of the little picot edge, little decorative edge towards the top. And I'm going to take and I'm going to zigzag this onto that seam allowance all the way around the body. When I get back over to here, I'm going to go until I can't go any further, so kind of where they're lined up with like a little V. I'm going to stop and then I'll show you what I'm going to do to finish that up. Okay, so now we have this little intersection going right here. Now what I would say is we're just going to take and chop one end off. And the other one needs to overlap. So kind of take one right about there. Then with this lining up, fold that under. Got to pin this. And then I can take and I can just zigzag the rest of this right here. And then maybe do a little stitch right here just to hold it down, and then we've got a band around the waist. Now something you can also do if you're worried about the elastic flipping up, You can, when this is finished, come over here and do a stitch within the ditch to tack your elastic downwards. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and then I'll be right back. And actually I'll tack it down at the side as well. Okay, so I zigzag that. I can then take and trim off that little bit, clip up my threads. I'll show you where I tacked it down. So you can see over here where I tacked it here, and I tacked it over here. And then on the finished garment, you can barely see it. If you look real close, you can see it, but I hid it within the seam allowance, or within the seam. So there we go, that's finished.